Hey out there, carnivore friends and carnivore potential friends. It's me, Bradford, your carnivore curmudgeon. And just to introduce myself, yes, I am an actual carnivore. No, I am not an actual curmudgeon, mostly. And you know, growing up in the Midwest, one of the things that was pretty much everywhere present was fish and chips, especially with an abundance of delicious hush puppies. So I thought I'd give my try at a carnivore version of this and see if I could bring back that nostalgic taste. I will tell you right up front, this recipe is very heavy on the fried pork rinds, the crushed kind, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So let's jump right in and start this dish with the hush puppies. What you're going to want to do is cook up on the stovetop a half a pound of ground chicken. Now they come in pound packages, so you know, do whatever you want. Cook the whole thing. I cooked the whole thing and then just used half. But the key to browning this chicken is you want to brown off all the moisture until there's just no more water left in the bottom. And when you stir it around, you start to see the actual meat turn brown. Then you know it's done and ready. You don't want this to be wet in any way. And as I mentioned, you're going to need a lot of crushed pork rinds. Mine that I buy come in 4-ounce bags, so I just crushed up 2 bags for this. But you need about 6 for this recipe. And you want them to be pretty fine if you're grinding them yourself. You don't want any of those molar breakers in there. Once you get them ground, you're going to need 3 eggs and some spices for these hush puppies. And we're going to start by putting that half a pound of ground chicken into the blender. You can use ground turkey for this as well, by the way. I think the ground chicken has a more neutral flavor since it essentially has no flavor at all. Then crack 3 eggs into that blender on top of that chicken. We're sort of making layers here, giving our blender a head start because this is a thick mixture. It's going to be pretty sticky. After the 3 eggs, put in about half of your pork panko, your pork rinds. And then to that, we're going to add now some spices. We're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of minced onion, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then top it off with the rest of your pork rinds. And let's get ready to give it a good mix. And again, this is going to be sticky, so you're going to want to add a 1/4 cup of chicken stock, even up to a 1/2 cup if it really won't hold together, because you want this like a dough. You can also put in an optional 1 teaspoon of baking powder, which I did use, but it's not necessary. Makes it a little bit lighter, I think. Then give everything a good mix, and you are going to have to push the sides down and do this a few times in order to get it all to incorporate. Now, while we form our hush puppies, go ahead and preheat your air fryer to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then get your hush puppy dough into a place where you can work with it and get it ready for frying. And really, you're just making like meatballs. Take this chicken and pork rind and spices mixture and roll it up just like you would a ground beef or ground pork meatball. Roll it in your hands. The size is up to you, but I would go smaller than a golf ball. Keep in mind, this is meat and fat. It's not actually hush puppies, so they're pretty rich. And you can always add a 1/4 teaspoon of sweet corn extract if you want to make this keto or if you're not concerned about those things. It adds a real nice nostalgic, really scent more than flavor. But it is there. You can tell the difference. I've done it before. And if you're truly offended by round hush puppies because you grew up where they were finger style, you can always just take the round ones and elongate them into finger style. But I wouldn't cook them at the same time because they're different shapes. So starting with the round ones, place them in your preheated air fryer basket with enough room all the way around them to give them some airflow. And we're going to cook them at 350 degrees for 15 minutes. That's probably plenty, but if you check them and they're not crunchy enough, then you can always put them back in for a couple minutes at a time. You can really hear that crispiness if it's done. Now repeat with your finger style hush puppies, but instead of 15 minutes, cook them 11 or 12 minutes. They're a lot less dense than the round ones. And when they cool enough to handle, when you tear it open, it's almost a bread-like consistency. And your hush puppies are done. And it's time for some tartar sauce. But of course, this is optional, just like really everything else in this recipe. Just depends on how closely you want to make it to an original, based on how you carnivore or keto. But it takes a half a cup of sour cream in this recipe. You can use mayonnaise. And to that sour cream, we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of dill. You can use fresh or dried. I use dried. A sprinkle of ground black pepper, and a sprinkle of salt. For the acid, you can use lemon juice, but I prefer, instead of chopping up some dill pickles, to just go ahead and use a tablespoon of dill pickle juice. And finally, you're going to need just a small squeeze, about a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. And folks, there's hardly any carbs in Dijon mustard, if you don't overdo it, of course. Then just give it a good stir and set it aside, because now it's time faux fish. And of course, classic fried fish is battered and deep fried in oil, but we're going to modify that by using 2 to 4 egg whites, depending on how many pieces of fish you want to make. And we're just going to whisk this until it starts to hold together. We're not making stiff peaks like you're making a meringue. We don't want meringue. We just want this to be a sticky consistency. The reason we're not using the whole egg is because this makes the batter a little bit lighter, but still holds the breading on without a heavy egg batter. So now it's time for the fish. I have some wild caught cod. Cod is a nice firm fish. It cooks up flaky. It seems it's classic for many people who make fish and chips. So we're just going to cut this into pieces that would resemble what you might get at a restaurant if you were to go and get fish and chips there. They're almost like thick, nice steaks when they're cut right. And of course, you're always going to have a thin piece, but that's the extra piece that goes along with the main piece. And remember all that pork panko, the pork rinds that were crushed up? Well, now we're going to need some more of it. And it just depends on how many pieces of fish you're going to make, and it depends on how thick you want your coating. But probably 1.5 cups will do nicely. And I like to season mine with a little garlic powder, a little bit of salt, and some regular paprika, not the smoked paprika. Just mix it in there by hand, and then take your fish and dredge it in your egg white mixture. Now, I started by sprinkling some pork panko on each piece, but I ended up laying it right in. I wasn't getting the thickness that I wanted, so I put it right in that pile and gave it a good pork panko bath. Our air fryer has been preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're just going to lay these in. You can't crowd them. Probably 2 pieces at a time is all you're going to be able to do, unless you have one of those multi-level air fryers, which I do have, but I've done this before in this air fryer, so I'm sticking to what I know works. And in it goes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And I started mine at 8 minutes, but in the end, I ended up cooking this for a total of 12 minutes until I got the desired texture and crunch that I wanted. Okay, let's talk about the chips portion of the fish and chips. In the United States, when we refer to fish and chips, it usually means French fries. And you know, there's just not a whole lot you can do on the carnivore diet to substitute French fries. I know there's some things you can do on the keto diet, but I thought that I would give a try to something I had heard about called bread cheese. And it's very popular, but I thought, I'll bet I could cut that up to look like French fries. And if it's supposed to taste like bread, maybe it'll be close enough. You're going to see at the end, it wasn't. But look at this crispy, flaky, awesome looking fish. Whether there's hush puppies or chips or any tartar sauce or anything else, this fish came out great. But that being said, here's some tartar sauce and some hush puppies. I even gave the bread cheese a chance. It looks good on the plate, but let's see how it tastes. Okay, so I have made the fish before. It's been a couple of years since I made it, but I've never made the hush puppies before. I just thought the two would go great together. And so I've got the fish, I've got the hush puppies, both styles, elongated and round balls. And I've got a little bit of this bread cheese. You know, it kind of looks like fries. It doesn't taste like fries, but I thought I'd give it a try with it anyway. Sort of make the whole fish and chips and hush puppies thing come together. One thing I will say about this plate, very plain looking. It's very brown and tan and white. But if you've ever been to a classic fish fry place, that's how their dishes all look. You know, there's really very little, if any, green anything going on. And since this is all keto or carnivore, depending on how you do carnivore, I guess we're just going to go without the green. So let's get right in here. I want to taste especially this fish with this tartar sauce. I'm just a tartar sauce guy when it comes to fish. Okay. Great crunch. Could probably use a little bit more salt in the batter. But it's pretty classic fried fish and tartar sauce combo. I like it. It tastes great. Really like these little hush puppies. It's more nostalgic than it is pure hush puppy flavor. And of course it's dense, so you don't pile your plate up with these hush puppies because you'll get bloated real quick. Gotta say, I like the hush puppies about as good as I do the fish. And I like the fish. That's saying something. I don't know if you can see that very well. Flaky, got a nice crunch on top, little tiny bit of tartar sauce, not drowning. Nothing not to like. It's a keeper. All right, gonna have one of these fry looking things here, the bread cheese. Yeah, so a lot of people, especially on the carnivore diet, really love the bread cheese. It's kind of pricey for me. It's $10 for a little brick of it. And it's okay. I would eat that with, you know, with a steak or something. Really doesn't lend anything to this particular plate other than a different texture and a little different flavor. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I wouldn't turn it down. And as usual, as I finish this plate, I hear somebody tippy-toeing through the hall looking to beg a bite or two. I'm not so sure. You dropped a piece. I'm going to call that Digby the dog taste test approved. I hope you'll give this a try and find it taste test approved yourself. I'd love to hear your comments. Thanks for watching and hope to see you next time.